Hey, we're live on Winning Rolls. And the winning roll we're looking at today is actually kind of a losing roll. And this is kind of tricky, isn't it? When you are a loser, when you lose at a game, technically you are the loser, okay? But you can take that and you can turn it into a winning mindset. So I want you to, what it makes me think of this is obviously it's March Madness and the games are going, and you watch some of these young guys and these teams and they lose, heartbreaking games. These are games that are like, you know, they'll never forget. Sometimes they lose it. They didn't play well and they lose by 1 point and it's heartbreaking. And so what is that person going to do with that loss? Will they become a better person from the loss? Or will they, let that loss define their rest of their career and really hamper their mindset? So I want to talk about the 5 steps for dealing effectively with losses. Okay, now sometimes I call these the 5 steps to recover strongly from loss. So I want you to write these down. Now, these can apply to if you have a loss of a person, or there's, if you have a personal loss. So a personal loss actually covers people, pets, positions, places. Sometimes your favorite restaurant shuts down. Positions, sometimes you lose a job. Your passions, sometimes you get too old to play your favorite sport or something like that. Passions, so there's 6 things anyway: people, pets, positions, places, and passions, and so those cover the personal side. But I'm talking today about competitive losses. There's personal losses and competitive losses. These 5 same steps to recover strongly work both ways. So let's say we're talking to one of these young guys or ladies, because the ladies tournament is going on right now, and there's these fierce battles and they just barely lose. And if you were their coach, how would you go over and talk to them? What would be the steps for them to recover strongly from this loss and play great next year? Because the season is over for this year. So here's the 5 steps to recover strongly. I want you to write these down, okay? Number 1 is, and this even applies when you lose a real estate deal. Let's say you have a great real estate deal and you think this is the greatest deal, and you're counting the money, and all of a sudden something goes south and you lose this deal. All right, so this is the same thing. Now, what if you let that one deal make you quit? I have seen people get one deal and it's their first deal and it looks so good and it crashes and burns, and then they say, oh, I guess this isn't going to work for me. Or I don't want to, that was too painful. I don't want to go through that anymore. Okay, well, guess what? That they did not deal with the loss well, did they? Did they recover strongly from that loss? Or did they let that loss define them and actually make them take a different path? I don't want you to let loss foment your fears and then focus on those fears and back away from life. So let's look at these 5 steps to recover strongly from losses. Whether you just lost a real estate deal, or you just lost, your dog, or if you just lost a game. And and some of these games are very important. You may have a very important game. Okay, so let's talk about number 1, 5 steps to recover strongly from loss. Number 1, cope with the initial shock and trauma. All right, so sometimes there is some initial shock and trauma. You did not expect to lose, or sometimes just out of the blue, your dog gets hit by a car or something. You just didn't expect it. And so you have to, there's an initial shock and trauma. And on some of these basketball games, this number 1 Florida lost and to Iowa State, I think it was. And, here they are, the number 1 seed. They play the whole season and win all these games to get the number 1 seed. And then they lose to a team that they should have beat. Okay. And just barely too. So that's an initial shock and trauma there to your psyche. And same thing if you even lose a competitive game. What if you're just playing Yahtzee at the table with your family. Okay. Well, hopefully if you lose, there's no initial shock and trauma. I mean, you see, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but sometimes you put all your heart and soul into something, like you go for a job, like you're trying to get a certain job and you put everything into it, and they call you back and say they went a different way. So that maybe there would be some initial shock and trauma you have to just deal with. Okay. Just dealing with your emotions up front. Number two is dealing with any practical matters. Sometimes practical matters come with a loss. I mean, if you're out on the court, you got to pack up your equipment and drive home. I mean, just the practical matters of moving on with life. But that also, applies to losing a loved one. There's a lot of practical matters dealing with that. So number two is dealing with practical matters. Number three is grieve for yourself and others over the loss. So if you just lost the basketball game of your life, you're going to have to grieve for yourself and feel bad for yourself and say, oh, that was too bad. But you don't live in the grief. You got to move on from the grief fairly quickly. Now, obviously, if you just lost your husband or wife or something of 40 years, that grief's going to last a while. Step number three is going to be a while. That's the grieving process, grieving for yourself and others. Who else lost out? I mean, you're feeling bad for your teammates. If you're in that basketball tournament, you lose the game, you feel bad for the teammates, you feel bad for the coach, you feel bad for the fans, and you have to kind of process those emotions, but guess what? If you never feel bad and if you never have to grieve a loss, it means you never got in the game. All right. So that's the biggest thing. This all teaches you that, hey, I can get in the game. I can absorb a loss. I have a plan to deal with a loss, and I can move on strongly. Okay. So number three, if you lose a really, really great real estate deal that you thought was a slam dunk, hopefully you're not grieving too long. Because number four is adjusting your expectations for the future. Okay, so number four, adjust your expectations for the future. So you might say, well, that deal didn't work out, and I had been expecting that in a couple of weeks I would be cashing a check for $15,000 and all this. Well, I have to adjust those expectations. That check's not coming. So and then what you do, and when I know somebody is adjusting their expectations and accepting, and that's finding closure by accepting, learning, and letting go is step 5. But when they say, we'll get you next year, or okay, yeah, we'll see you next year, or we'll win next year, that shows that they have, accepted that this is, they've lost and that they're moving on and they're focusing, they've adjusted their expectations for the future. And they've said, okay, my expectations for the future, though, is that we're going to win next year. So they put it on that. So number 5 is finding closure on any loss, even if it's I get kind of frustrated when we lose a really close pickleball game that I was really trying hard. And sometimes we only get to play certain people sometimes. And if we're playing really great people and we have a really close game and we lose and we only get to play them once a month, I'm a super competitive person and I will chew on it. And that's one thing I have to get past. I have to grieve quicker on something like that. Oh, not at all. And basically you want to be able to grieve like that. Now, I have a whole bunch of strategies and stuff for doing these 5 steps. Again, the 5th step was finding closure by learning and letting go. Okay, find closure by learning and letting go. So when you are looking at the situation, what you lost, you learn what you can. You say, okay, I can learn this. I can learn this. Every loss comes with something you can learn. Every single loss comes with something that you can learn. And in fact, sometimes there are life lessons that you can learn, but losses are part of being human, and we're all going to go through loss. And especially like when you lose your parents, and that's a really big loss where you have to go through those 5 steps. And now there's 3 key lessons that you can learn from loss, just any loss at all. And I like to throw these in. Number 1, no matter what the loss is, it's sort of a touchstone to say, are my priorities straight? Keep your priorities straight. Remember that winning isn't what's most important. Okay, so if you're in a competition with like the neighborhood, let's say you have a cornhole party in your backyard, okay, and everybody's kind of drinking and having fun, and you lose a game. And some people are kind of competitive and they get serious about it, and they might be a little annoyed for the rest of the day, or even say some swear words or something like that, right? All right, well, obviously the priority should be conviviality. We're having a great time with all of our neighbors. We're having fun. So fun should be the priority and a backyard get together. But you've seen this happen. And a fun should be the priority when it's a family get together. But you've seen, people break out the games. And sometimes, there's certain people who they lose their priorities, and winning becomes everything. Even, the sacrificing, just having a fun time. So fun goes out the window. So that's number one. If you lose, take a deep breath, keep your priorities straight. This isn't that important. Most times, most losses are not life or death. And so keep your priorities straight. Number two, appreciate if you lose a person or a possession, those are the 6 things, okay? They're people, pets, possessions, places, positions, and passions. Those are the 6 things that you can lose as a person. And those are what I call personal losses. So if you lose one of those, it sort of makes you do number 2, which is appreciate the precious people and blessings in your life while you still have them. Okay, so that's important. Appreciate the people and blessings in your life while you still have them. Okay, so that's obviously appreciating life, giving thanks, being grateful. Every morning you should wake up with an attitude of gratitude. Okay, but loss kind of points that out. Anytime you lose something, you kind of think, what you look at what you still have and you be more grateful. Okay, number 3, don't take minor losses too seriously. As we say, don't sweat the small stuff. So we'll have little losses sometimes, and a lot of folks deal with minor losses pretty well, and it doesn't ruffle their feathers. But I'm telling you, there's sometimes, especially if it's between you and somebody that you're having a thing going with, you can get kind of annoyed and chew on it and waste time thinking and dwelling on some loss that's really, don't sweat the small stuff. It really didn't mean anything in the long run. It might seem important today, but will it be important in a week? Ask yourself that. That's a good little mindset technique, is say, okay, I'm really stressed out about this. I'm anxious. I'm fearful. I'm frustrated. I'm, feeling too competitive. Will this matter in a week? Will I even care about this in a week? And a lot of times the answer is no. And so it gives you the sort of the perspective to say, okay, I'm going to let go of this now. All right. So again, those are the 5 steps that I want you to take in this process. The 5 steps to, I missed it here. I wanted to go over it one more time for you. The 5 steps for recovering strongly from losses, whether it's a competitive loss or a personal loss. Those are the 2 kinds of losses. So I went over everything that comes with a personal loss. A competitive loss is just, you were in a game or a contest or some kind of a competition and it didn't go your way. So again, number 1, cope with the initial shock and trauma. And, if you get a call that your mom passed away, that's going to be significant. But if it's, if you stub your toe or, obviously there's degrees here. Number 2, deal with the practical matters. Sometimes there's lots of practical matters to a loss. Sometimes there's really nothing. So again, those 2 are always determinant on what the loss is. Number 3, grieve for yourself and others. And even if it's a minor loss, guys, sometimes you got to feel bad for a second to just move on. And number 4, adjust your expectations. And that's the biggest thing that people don't always take into account. Your life may be very different after this. If you were going for a job, or let's say you were going for a promotion at your work and you didn't get it. All right, well, that's a loss. You lost out on that promotion and you were really imagining a whole different life for yourself. And now you got to kind of adjust your expectations and say, okay, well, I guess I'm going to be here for a while. And sometimes that's pretty hard. Sometimes the number 4, adjusting your expectations from a loss, can be the hardest part. But if you don't do it, what are you going to do? You're going to live there in turmoil. You're not, if you're living, then you're going to have expectations. This creates cognitive dissonance. If you have expectations for your life that are continuously, daily not being met, it creates a lot of cognitive dissonance. There's two ways to deal with cognitive dissonance. Get your life to match up with those expectations or adjust the expectations. Now, I'm all for get your life to adjust, to match the expectations, have high expectations for your life and do everything you can to meet your expectations and solve your cognitive dissonance through that, as opposed to accepting less than what you could be. But if you take a serious loss, obviously you need to adjust those expectations to be able to do number 5, which is find closure by learning and letting go. So you learn whatever you can, even write some notes. What the heck did I learn from this? And like I said, you can always learn that, put my priorities straight, focus on what's important, appreciate what I have in my life. All those things are all lessons, but might be specific lessons to that loss. Like I have to work on my overhead slam or, something in pickleball if you just lost a pickleball game. So it's all kind of levels of loss, all the way from losing someone close to you to losing a Yahtzee game. And so, but still these 5 same steps that can process these things very quickly. All right. So I want to talk about loss because I just see these kids in these tournaments and it's heartbreaking, man. When their whole life is this and they lose a game because they miss a shot at the last second. It's not like the pros. The pros are all rich. And, if they win or lose a game, yeah, it's important to them, but it's not their life, where they might not even get into the pros if they miss that shot. So it's tough to watch those losses, and you have losses in your life I want you to be able to deal very effectively with. So use those techniques. And I have a whole unit on dealing with competitive losses and personal losses that can be very helpful. And we just had a loss in our family, so it's been helpful. So, what a lot of great comments. Good morning. Happy Monday. Email you 2 deals you're finalizing. Awesome. I was just working with Lucky on a deal. I hope he's here. Charles, good morning. Happy Monday, everyone. Happy Monday. Nolan, Kathy, awesome to see you. I like be the learner. I'm winning or learning. I like that a lot. And I always say, learning, there's, what's my saying on loss and learning? There's learn from every loss, there's learning in every loss. So anytime either you're winning or else you're learning, which is adjusting your approach and getting smarter. So know how to recover from serious loss is such an essential skill set. That's true. People will let one really serious loss of a loved one or loss of a relationship or, people's house, we had Roger's house burnt down. That was a big loss. And Roger shared that with us. So, recovering, that's a big loss to recover from. So these 5 steps can help you at least think about it in a clear way. Because sometimes you get lost in loss and you're just all confused and depressed. But when you can start thinking about it, well, I just got to get through these 5 steps. And, when you approach it that way, it can give you a good way to think about it. That's more helpful. Okay. Recovering strongly. Yes, that's the key. You don't just recover, you recover as strongly as possible. Edison said, I didn't fail at building the light bulb 200 times. Instead, it was 200 ways on how not to build a light bulb. Right. So every time that could have been considered a loss. And instead he looked at it as a learning moment. So, however, the next try was the successful one. Right. And if you, if you fail, try again. If at first you don't succeed, try again. I also live by the knowledge that there's always another deal. And that's what I'm talking about too. So when you guys lose a real estate deal, it can be very frustrating and it can be a little hard to let go of because you were counting the numbers in your head and it seemed good. Here's where those deals go south a lot of times is the spouse. So that's one of my big tips, guys. If you find yourself feeling like you got deals and then all of a sudden they're evaporating, try to get both husband and wife on the phone on the closing call. As simple as that. Or make sure they're both together and they can both hear you. Or if one just can't be there, tell the one that you were talking to have the other one go on your website Okay, just that little step where they see your website and they go, oh, okay, this is a real business. I guess these people are for real, and I like what they say on their website. And so I'm telling you, that can be that credibility factor where they just can't explain what you were talking about to their spouse in any kind of a credible way. But that is the way to possibly save that. But again, yes, every deal, try to figure out. Sometimes you can't figure out. They just ghosted you. It seemed like a really good deal and you got ghosted. I'm telling you, a lot of times it's the spouse on those deals. But, always try to figure out what went south, and then figure out how to not have that happen again. Yes, people, pets, places, positions, possessions, and passions. So pretty much all your blessings in your life, everything you love and treasure is in one of those categories. And so, your favorite hobby is your passion. Your possessions, obviously we have precious possessions. I had a whole box of books that I saved from when I don't even want to talk about it. So, and see, now I have not really dealt. Oh boy, see, they're okay. I'm not following my own advice because I have not properly grieved that loss of that possession. Because I got a little. Oh, I don't want to talk about it. Okay, positions. What if you lose a job? That really destroys some people. Places, like I said, sometimes you were living in a house and you had to sell the house and move to a different place, and you kind of miss that place. Or like you move across the country, you lose a whole bunch of places. Like if you move from one city to the next, you lose all your favorite places. So that, you don't really always think about that, but that's a grieving process. And then of course, pets is, a huge thing for people who are pet owners. Huge heartbreak. I mean, right below people and sometimes above people. I mean, they're with you all the time. You love them intensely. And sometimes a person, their third cousin that you didn't even hardly know, and they pass away. And is that as much of an impact on your life as losing that pet that was with you 24/7? So pets are people who don't have pets sometimes don't realize how really heartrending that can be, losing a pet, especially if they are lost suddenly. There's a big shock and trauma element there too. So be nice to people who lose pets, and of course people. So I want you to just be aware of that's all the things you can lose. And if you have this 5-step strategy for just coming to grips with it and just an approach, sometimes we're just so lost, we don't have any kind of approach, and we're just all stuck in step 3, really stuck in the grief. But if you are working on adjusting your expectations and moving on and working on learning and everything, all those other aspects, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel when you have a process like this. Okay, you have a way to recover strongly. Okay, so again, yeah, and of course, guys, you probably know that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross 5 steps of bargaining, denial, anger, bargaining, denial, acceptance. Oh, I can't remember them all. Depression. That's it. Okay, so anger, depression, bargaining, acceptance. No, I forgot one. You know what I'm saying. Okay, so those are the 5. But remember, that's the Kubler-Ross model. And that is the emotional stages that you go through. I'm talking about, with these 5 steps, taking control of your emotions, taking control of the grieving process, not just saying, okay, I guess I'm depressed for a while. First, I'm all angry for a while. Now I'm all going to be depressed for a while. And, working through that process. So guys, wait till I have this and you can read the whole thing, because it really gives you some very detailed techniques. It's not just the overview like I only can do today. So guys, great. Thank you for being on today. I know this was a little bit more heavy topic, kind of, but again, I'm watching all these kids losing, getting their hearts broken in this March Madness. And it just made me think of, let's all deal with our losses the best possible way, whether it's losing a deal in real estate or whatever else it may be. So I recover strongly from losses. Okay, I recover strongly from losses. 3 times on 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. I recover strongly from losses. I recover strongly from losses. I recover strongly from losses. Yes. All right. Awesome. Let's do 3 deep breaths. Good. Hold it. And okay. Another one. Good. Oh, this is so invigorating. I just love doing the deep breathing with you guys. One more. Okay, awesome. All right, so let's have a great day. Let's have a great week. Let's work deals, and guys, have a full heart and approach deals with absolute faith, because sometimes I think the reason people don't have courage to go get deals is they fear the emotions and the difficult emotions at not getting them and losing deals. And so if you're afraid of that, now you have a strategy that you can deal with your losses, and you can go into this with a lot of confidence and a lot of boldness. Great topic. Thank you so much, Isabel. Thank you, everybody. And I will. So we talked about the winning role of resilient loser. Okay, I mean, and we all lose sometimes, don't we? But you want to be a resilient loser and not a depressed loser and not an unproductive loser. You want to actually be a learning loser, an educated loser. And then guess what? You play the role of loser a little bit, but you turn that role into winner. And that's why we talk about winning roles. So until I see you guys on Friday, keep expecting success, getting awesome training from the Wolf Couple to play winning roles in your life. And also keep taking action. Keep being an energetic action taker. That's an awesome role.